entitled parents niche changed grandma's will so I ruined her life. I stared at the lawyer's mouth moving, but the words weren't making sense. Something about sole beneficiary and entire estate valued at approximately $847,000. My hands went numb clutching the tissues I'd grabbed for what I thought would be tears of grief, not whatever this was. I'm sorry, could you repeat that? My voice sounded foreign, like it was coming from underwater. Mr. Henderson, Grandma Rose's attorney for the past 15 years, adjusted his glasses and cleared his throat. Your grandmother's will, last updated 6 months ago, leaves her entire estate, including the family home on Maple Street, all savings accounts, and personal effects, to your niece, Jessica Chen. The previous will splitting everything equally among you and your siblings has been superseded. The conference room suddenly felt like it was tilting. My brother Mark reached over and grabbed my elbow, probably thinking I was about to faint. Honestly, I might have been. 6 months ago? My sister Sarah's voice was sharp. But we were just there for Christmas. Grandma didn't mention anything about changing her will. The document was properly executed and witnessed, Mr. Henderson continued, shuffling papers with obvious discomfort. Your niece has provided all necessary documentation for probate. Jessica. 23-year-old Jessica, who'd swooped in 2 years ago offering to help take care of Grandma after she'd had that fall. Jessica, who I'd been Venmoing $400 every month to help with groceries and medical expenses. Jessica, who was sitting in the corner chair wearing a black dress that probably cost more than my rent, dabbing at completely dry eyes. There has to be a mistake, Mark said. Mom always talked about keeping everything fair between the grandkids. She specifically told me last year that she wanted to make sure we all got something to remember her by. I watched Jessica's face carefully. Not a flicker of surprise or confusion. Just a subtle tightening around her eyes, like she was annoyed we were questioning this at all. Grandma Rose was very clear about her wishes. Jessica spoke up for the first time, her voice soft and wounded. She was so grateful that I was there for her when she needed someone. Especially after. She trailed off, glancing at us with what looked like pity. Well, she felt like I was the only one who really cared about her final years. The accusation hit like a slap. I'd driven 4 hours every other weekend for the past 2 years to visit Grandma. I'd sat through every doctor's appointment when I could, helped her organize her medications, listened to the same stories about her childhood for hours because they brought her comfort. That's not fair, Jessica, Sarah said, her teacher voice coming out. We all loved Grandma. We all helped however we could. I'm sure you did your best, Jessica replied, and somehow managed to make it sound condescending as hell. Mr. Henderson was clearly desperate to escape this family drama. If there are no questions about the legal documentation, I believe we can conclude dash. Actually, I do have questions, I interrupted, finding my voice again. I'd like copies of everything. The new will, witness statements, all of it. Jessica's composure cracked just slightly. Why? Don't you trust Grandma's final wishes? I looked directly at her, this girl I'd bought birthday presents for, whose college graduation we'd all celebrated just 2 years ago. I trust Grandma completely. It's you I'm having trouble with. The silence in that conference room could have been cut with a knife. Jessica's face flushed red, but she recovered quickly, putting on what I was starting to recognize as her practiced victim expression. I can't believe you're attacking me at Grandma's funeral, she whispered, letting her voice break just enough. I sacrificed 2 years of my life to take care of her. I moved into that house, gave up my social life, my dating life, everything. And this is the thanks I get? Nobody asked you to sacrifice anything, Mark shot back. We all offered to help more, but you kept saying you had it handled. That was true. Every time one of us suggested hiring additional help or setting up a rotation schedule, Jessica had insisted she was fine managing alone. Said Grandma was too fragile for strangers, that she got confused with too many people around. Because she was fragile, Jessica snapped, dropping the wounded act for a second. Especially toward the end. You have no idea what it was like, dealing with her mood swings, her paranoia about money. She became obsessed with the idea that people were only visiting her because they wanted her inheritance. My stomach dropped. Grandma was never paranoid about money. She was one of the most generous people I knew. Well, people change when they get old and scared, Jessica said, her tone turning clinical. The doctor said it was normal for elderly patients to become suspicious, even of family members. That's probably why she became so attached to me. I was there every day, proving my love wasn't conditional. I felt like I was going to be sick. The picture Jessica was painting of Grandma Rose's final months was completely foreign to me. During my visits, Grandma had seemed tired and a little more forgetful, sure, but not paranoid or suspicious. She'd always been happy to see me, always asked about my job and my dating life, always insisted on making me her famous snickerdoodles even though her hands shook a little with the mixer. What doctor? Sarah asked. Dr. Martinez never mentioned anything about paranoia when I talked to him. She had to switch doctors, Jessica said quickly. Dr. Martinez wasn't taking her concerns seriously. Dr. Franklin was much more understanding about her condition. Another red flag. Grandma Rose had been seeing Dr. Martinez for over a decade. She trusted him completely, always bragged about how he took time to really listen to her. Why would she suddenly switch doctors? I want contact information for Dr. Franklin, I said. And I want to see Grandma's medical records from the past 6 months. Jessica's jaw tightened. I don't think that's appropriate. Grandma valued her privacy. Grandma's dead, Jessica. Privacy isn't really a concern anymore. Mr. Henderson cleared his throat. Perhaps we should table this discussion for now. Emotions are running high, which is understandable given the circumstances. Mrs. Chen, I can have copies of the will documentation sent to your attorney by tomorrow. I don't have an attorney, I said. Then I'd recommend getting one, he replied, already packing up his briefcase. As we filed out of the office, Jessica hung back, probably to have some private conversation with Henderson. I waited by the elevator, my mind racing. Something was wrong here. Everything about this felt wrong. When Jessica finally emerged, she had her phone pressed to her ear. Yes, the meeting's over, she was saying. No, there weren't any major issues. A few questions, but nothing we didn't expect. She hung up quickly when she saw me listening, but not before I caught her next words. I'll transfer the first payment tonight. Payment? What payment? And to whom? Ready to go grieve properly now? Jessica asked sweetly, like she hadn't just been having a suspicious conversation about mysterious payments. I smiled back just as sweetly. Absolutely. I think I'm going to grieve very thoroughly. The drive back to Grandma's house, Jessica's house now, I guess, was torture. I kept replaying that phone conversation, trying to make sense of the first payment. Payment for what? To whom? And why did she sound like she'd been expecting pushback from us? Mark and Sarah were quiet too, lost in their own thoughts. We'd agreed to help Jessica go through some of Grandma's personal items before she had to start making decisions about the property. The way she said it made my skin crawl, like she was already planning to flip it. Walking into that familiar blue house felt like entering a crime scene. Everything looked the same. Grandma's ceramic owl collection still lined the mantel. Her reading glasses were still folded on the side table next to her crossword puzzle book, but something felt fundamentally wrong. I've already packed up most of her medications and medical supplies, Jessica announced, gesturing to several boxes stacked by the front door. Figured there was no point keeping that stuff around. Wait, I said, moving toward the boxes. Shouldn't we go through those? See what she was taking, maybe understand more about her condition? Jessica stepped smoothly between me and the boxes. Just standard old person stuff. Blood pressure medication, vitamins, some pain relievers. Nothing interesting. But she was blocking my view pretty aggressively for someone who claimed it was nothing interesting. I'd still like to look, I pressed. Actually, I already promised to donate them to Dr. Franklin's office. They have a program for patients who can't afford medications. Jessica's voice had that edge again. Unless you want to take medicine away from poor people? God, she was good at this. Making me sound heartless for asking basic questions. Sarah wandered into the kitchen and called out, Jess, what happened to Grandma's recipe box? The wooden one with the apple carving? What recipe box? Jessica called back, but I caught a flash of something in her expression. The one that belonged to her mother, I said, following Sarah into the kitchen. She kept it right there on the counter next to the coffee maker. Had all her handwritten recipes, some going back 50 years. The counter was bare except for a new-looking coffee machine I didn't recognize. Oh, that old thing, Jessica said, appearing in the doorway. It was pretty beat up. I think I might have accidentally thrown it out during one of my cleaning days. Grandma was getting overwhelmed by clutter. My heart sank. That recipe box was irreplaceable. Grandma had shown me her mother's handwritten card for Christmas stolen just last December, telling me the story of how her mother had brought the recipe from Germany in 1952. You threw it out? Sarah's voice was barely controlled. Jessica, that was a family heirloom. I'm sorry, okay? I was doing my best to keep her comfortable and organized. Sometimes that meant making tough decisions. Jessica's victim face was back. I was trying to focus on her health, not stuff. Mark emerged from the living room holding a framed photo of our grandfather. Speaking of stuff, what happened to the china cabinet? The one with all of Mom's good dishes? I looked where he was pointing. There was a clean rectangle on the wall where the antique china cabinet had hung, displaying the spode dinnerware Grandma had inherited from her own grandmother. I moved it to storage, Jessica said quickly. The mounting was getting loose, and I was worried it might fall and hurt her. Storage where? Mark asked. Just a storage unit. For safety. 3 family heirlooms, gone or disappeared. I was starting to see a pattern. Jessica, I need to ask you something directly, I said, turning to face her. In that lawyer meeting, when you were on the phone afterward, I heard you mention transferring a payment. What was that about? Her face went completely blank for just a second, a micro-expression of panic before the mask slipped back on. I have no idea what you're talking about, she said. I wasn't on any calls about payments. I heard you specifically say I'll transfer the first payment tonight. You must have misheard me, Jessica replied smoothly. I was probably talking to the funeral home about final arrangements. There are a lot of payments involved in all this. But I'd heard what I'd heard. And Jessica's increasingly elaborate explanations were starting to sound like someone covering their tracks. Where's the key to Grandma's safe deposit box? I asked suddenly. Jessica blinked. What safe deposit box? The one at First National Bank. She's had it for 15 years. There's no safe deposit box. Jessica, I said carefully, I drove her there myself last Christmas to put in her new pearl earrings. The ones Uncle Robert gave her. The silence stretched on just a little too long. Well, Jessica said finally, maybe she closed it. When would she have closed it? I pressed. And why wouldn't she tell any of us? Jessica's composure was definitely cracking now. I don't know, okay? Maybe she forgot to mention it. She was forgetting a lot of things toward the end. But that didn't make sense either. Grandma Rose had been meticulous about her finances her entire life. She balanced her checkbook to the penny every month and kept detailed records of everything. The idea that she'd casually close a safe deposit box without telling anyone felt completely out of character. I'm going to call the bank, I announced. You can't, Jessica said quickly. I mean, you don't have authorization. Only the box holder or someone with power of attorney can access that information. Did you have power of attorney, Jessica? Another pause. Yes. Toward the end, when she was having trouble managing things herself. When exactly did she give you power of attorney? It was a gradual process. She needed help with bills, medical decisions. Sarah was staring at Jessica with her teacher expression, the one she used when she knew a student was lying about homework. Jessica, power of attorney isn't a gradual process. It's a legal document with a specific date. When did Grandma sign it? Jessica's face was flushed now. Look, I don't have to justify every decision I made while I was sacrificing my life to take care of her. Where were all these questions when you needed someone to drive her to dialysis 3 times a week? Dialysis? Mark's voice was sharp. What dialysis? Grandma's kidneys were fine. Dr. Martinez told me her blood work was good at her last appointment. The room went dead silent. Jessica's eyes widened like she just realized she'd said something she shouldn't have. I meant physical therapy, she stammered. Not dialysis. Physical therapy 3 times a week after her fall. But I remembered now. When I visited in January, Grandma had mentioned feeling tired on Tuesdays and Thursdays. She'd said Jessica was taking her to appointments but had been vague about what kind. At the time, I'd assumed it was routine doctor visits. What physical therapy? Sarah demanded. For what? She was walking fine when I saw her last month. You saw her for 2 hours, Jessica snapped. You have no idea what her daily struggles were like. She was in pain constantly, but she didn't want to worry you guys. She made me promise not to tell you how bad it really was. That felt like manipulation again. Making us feel guilty for not knowing about problems that apparently only Jessica was aware of. I want to see her medical records, I said firmly. All of them. From Dr. Martinez and this Dr. Franklin. That's private medical information. I'm her granddaughter. And I was her caregiver with medical power of attorney, Jessica shot back. Then show us the power of attorney document. Jessica's jaw worked silently for a moment. It's with my things. At my apartment. Then let's go get it. I don't have to prove anything to you people, Jessica exploded suddenly. Grandma chose me. She trusted me with her final years, and she trusted me with her legacy. If you can't accept that, maybe you should ask yourselves why she felt closer to me than to her own grandchildren. The accusation stung because part of me was starting to wonder if there was truth to it. Had we missed signs that Grandma was struggling? Had Jessica really been carrying a burden we'd failed to share? But then I remembered the phone call about payments, and the missing recipe box, and the mysterious safe deposit box situation. You know what? I said, pulling out my phone. I'm going to call Dr. Martinez right now. Ask him about Grandma's condition in her final months. He won't be able to tell you anything due to patient confidentiality. We'll see. I dialed the number I'd saved from calling to schedule Grandma's last appointment. Jessica watched me like a hawk, her hands clenched into fists at her sides. Dr. Martinez's office, this is Linda. Hi Linda, this is Emma Chen. I'm calling about my grandmother, Rose Chen. She passed away last week. Oh honey, I'm so sorry for your loss. Dr. Martinez was wondering why she missed her Friday appointment. My blood ran cold. Her Friday appointment? This past Friday? Yes, her weekly checkup. She's been coming in every Friday for the past 6 months for monitoring. I looked directly at Jessica, whose face had gone completely white. Linda, what was Dr. Martinez monitoring exactly? Oh, the medication adjustment program, Linda said cheerfully. Your grandmother was having some cognitive issues, confusion, memory problems, so Dr. Martinez was working with her to find the right balance of medications. We were actually making really good progress. Her last blood work showed the confusion was clearing up nicely. The phone felt slippery in my suddenly sweating palm. Confusion from medication? Yes, turns out she'd been taking some supplements that were interacting badly with her blood pressure medication. Once we identified the problem and got her off those supplements, she was much sharper. Dr. Martinez was so pleased with her improvement. Jessica looked like she was about to bolt from the room. Linda, who was bringing my grandmother to these appointments? Well, that's the odd thing. She always came alone, took a taxi. Said her granddaughter who lived with her was too busy to drive her. We offered to call you folks, we had your numbers on file as emergency contacts, but she insisted she could manage. My heart was pounding so hard I could barely hear Linda's voice. She was taking taxis? Every week? Sweet lady, very determined to be independent. Though she did mention a few times that she was worried about, well, I probably shouldn't repeat private conversations. Please, Linda. She's gone now, and we're trying to understand what happened in her final months. There was a pause. She was concerned that someone in the family was taking advantage of her financially. She asked Dr. Martinez if confusion from medication could make someone more susceptible to manipulation. That's actually what prompted us to investigate the drug interactions. The room was spinning. I gripped the edge of Grandma's kitchen counter to steady myself. Did she say who she thought was taking advantage of her? She never mentioned names, but she did say it was someone she trusted, someone living in her house. She was heartbroken about it, kept saying she felt foolish for being so trusting. Jessica made a small, choked sound. Linda, I need to ask you something else. Do you have any record of Dr. Franklin treating my grandmother? Someone claimed she switched doctors. Dr. Franklin? No honey, she never switched. She was adamant about staying with Dr. Martinez. Said he was the only doctor who'd listened when she complained about feeling confused and forgetful. I thanked Linda and hung up with shaking hands. The silence in the kitchen was deafening. Weekly taxi rides to the doctor, I said slowly, looking at Jessica. While you told us you were handling all her medical care. She didn't tell me about those appointments, Jessica said weakly. Because she was investigating whether someone was manipulating her, Sarah said, her voice deadly quiet. Someone living in her house. And she was getting better, Mark added. The confusion was clearing up. Which means toward the end, she was thinking clearly when she supposedly changed her will. Jessica's face cycled through several expressions, panic, anger, desperation. You don't understand, she finally said. She was getting paranoid, accusing me of things. The medication changes made her suspicious of everyone. Or, I said, stepping closer to her, the medication changes made her realize what you were actually doing. I never did anything wrong, Jessica insisted, but her voice was shaking now. I took care of her. I sacrificed everything. Show us the power of attorney document, Sarah demanded. I told you, it's at my apartment. Then show us the safe deposit box key. I don't know anything about a safe deposit box. Show us Dr. Franklin's contact information. I don't have it with me. Mark laughed bitterly. Jessica, do you have documentation for anything you've claimed today? That's when Jessica's mask finally slipped completely. The wounded granddaughter expression vanished, replaced by something cold and calculating that made my skin crawl. You want to know the truth, she said, her voice dropping to a whisper. The truth is that Grandma Rose was a lonely, scared old woman who was grateful someone finally cared enough to be there for her. And yes, she wanted to show her appreciation. That's not a crime. What did you do, Jessica? She stared at me for a long moment, and I could practically see her deciding how much to admit. I helped her see clearly, she said finally. Helped her understand who really deserved her legacy. Helped her see clearly? I repeated, my voice barely containing the rage building in my chest. What the hell does that mean, Jessica? She crossed her arms defensively, but there was something different in her posture now. Less victim, more defiant. It means I opened her eyes to reality. Do you know how many times she sat in that living room, crying because none of you called? How many birthdays she spent alone because everyone was too busy? We called her every week, Sarah protested. I talked to her every Sunday after church. Oh please, Jessica scoffed. 5-minute conversations asking if she was okay, then rushing off the phone when she wanted to actually talk. Meanwhile, I listened to her stories for hours. I held her hand when she was scared. I was the one who mattered. The cold calculation in her voice sent chills down my spine. This wasn't the Jessica who used to braid friendship bracelets at family barbecues. This was someone I didn't recognize at all. So you convinced her to change her will, Mark said. How exactly did you help her see clearly about that? Jessica's smile was razor sharp. I didn't have to convince her of anything. I just made sure she understood the situation properly. Like when Emma sent that $400 each month? I'd mentioned how it barely covered half the groceries, how it would be nice if family members contributed more instead of just throwing pocket change at the problem. My stomach dropped. I asked you multiple times if you needed more money. You always said $400 was plenty. Because I wanted to see if you'd offer more on your own. See if you actually cared about the cost of her medications, her physical therapy, her special dietary needs. Jessica's voice was getting stronger, more confident. But you never did. None of you ever asked for receipts or wanted to see how the money was being spent. You just wanted to feel good about yourselves. What physical therapy? Sarah demanded. You just admitted there was no physical therapy. Jessica waved her hand dismissively. There could have been. There should have been. The point is, Grandma needed care that cost money, and I was providing it while you three sent your little monthly allowances and considered yourselves good grandchildren. Show us the receipts then, I said. Show us where that $400 a month went. I don't owe you an itemized breakdown of Dash. Show us the goddamn receipts, Jessica. She flinched at my tone, then straightened her shoulders. Fine. You want receipts? Let's talk about receipts. Did you know Grandma was spending $300 a week on groceries? Because someone had to make sure she was eating properly, not just whatever frozen dinners were on sale. That seemed high, but possible. Grandma had always been particular about fresh ingredients. And her medication copays were $150 a month, plus the supplements Dr. Martinez recommended for her joint pain. Plus I had to hire a cleaning service twice a week because she couldn't manage the housework anymore but was too proud to admit it. What cleaning service? Mark asked. The house always looked like Grandma cleaned it herself. Because I supervised them to make sure everything was exactly how she liked it, Jessica snapped. Do you have any idea how exhausting it is to micromanage every aspect of an elderly person's life? Something about her tone bothered me. She sounded less like a devoted caregiver and more like someone describing a particularly difficult job. Jessica, I said slowly, did Grandma actually ask you to hire these services? Or did you decide she needed them? She needed them whether she asked or not. That's the thing about elderly people, they don't always know what's best for them anymore. The casual dismissiveness in that statement made my blood run cold. So you made decisions for her? Without asking. I made decisions that needed to be made. Someone had to be the responsible adult in this situation. She was the adult. Sarah exploded. It was her house, her money, her life. And look how well she was managing it, Jessica shot back. Living alone in a house too big for her, forgetting to take her medications, eating cereal for dinner half the time. She needed guidance. From you? You're 23 years old. Age has nothing to do with capability. I was the one who researched her medical conditions, found the best doctors, made sure she was getting proper nutrition. I was the one who loved her enough to make the hard choices. There was something deeply unsettling about the way she kept framing control as love. What hard choices? Jessica's eyes gleamed. Like when I realized she was being taken advantage of by that handyman, Mr. Peterson. She was paying him $200 every time he came over, even when he barely did anything. So I fired him and found someone more affordable. I remembered Mr. Peterson. He'd been helping Grandma with yard work and small repairs for over 10 years. She trusted him completely, and he'd always been fair with his prices. Grandma loved Mr. Peterson. Why would you fire him without asking her? Because she was too trusting. He was overcharging her, and she couldn't see it because she got attached to people. That's exactly the kind of financial vulnerability I was protecting her from. Or maybe, Mark said quietly, you wanted control over who had access to her. Jessica's face flushed. Everything I did was in her best interest. Including isolating her from Dr. Martinez? She wasn't isolated from anyone. She chose to try a new doctor who specialized in geriatric care. There is no Dr. Franklin, I said. I'm going to call every geriatric specialist in the city if I have to, but I guarantee we won't find anyone by that name who treated Grandma. For the first time since her mask had dropped, Jessica looked genuinely rattled. You're wasting your time. Then it won't matter if I make the calls. She stared at me for a long moment, and I could see her calculating something. Finally, she shrugged. You know what? Make all the calls you want. Hire all the lawyers you can afford. Grandma's will is legal, properly witnessed, and filed with probate court. She was competent when she signed it, and she knew exactly what she was doing. The confidence in her voice made my heart sink. What aren't you telling us? Jessica's smile returned, sharp and triumphant. I'm telling you that in 6 weeks, this house will be mine. The bank accounts are already frozen pending probate, but they'll be released to me soon enough. And there's absolutely nothing you can do about it. She started walking toward the front door, then paused and turned back. Oh, and Emma? I'd stopped sending money to help with Grandma's care. She doesn't need it anymore. The front door slammed behind Jessica, leaving the three of us standing in Grandma's kitchen in stunned silence. My hands were shaking so badly I had to grip the counter to steady myself. Did that really just happen? Sarah whispered. Mark was already pulling out his phone. I'm calling Mom's lawyer. The one who handled her divorce. Maybe he can recommend someone who deals with estate fraud. Wait, I said, my mind racing. Before we do anything legal, we need evidence. Real evidence, not just suspicions. I walked over to the boxes Jessica had stacked by the door, the ones supposedly containing Grandma's medications. Help me go through these. We carried the boxes back to the kitchen and started opening them. The first box contained exactly what you'd expect from an elderly person's medicine cabinet: blood pressure pills, calcium supplements, reading glasses. But the second box made my blood run cold. What the hell is this? Mark held up a bottle of prescription pills I didn't recognize. Haloperidol? What's haloperidol? Sarah grabbed her phone and started typing. After a moment, her face went white. It's an antipsychotic. Used to treat, oh my god, agitation and confusion in elderly patients. My hands were numb as I reached for another bottle. Lorazepam. Risperidone. I'd never heard of any of these medications. Sarah, what are these? More typing, more horrified silence. Sedatives. Anti-anxiety medications. Emma, these are all drugs used to make people confused and compliant. The room started spinning. Dr. Martinez said Grandma's confusion was from drug interactions. From supplements that were interfering with her blood pressure medication. These aren't supplements, Mark said grimly, lining up the pill bottles on Grandma's kitchen table. These are serious psychiatric medications. Who prescribed these? I picked up the haloperidol bottle and squinted at the label. Dr. Richard Franklin, MD, Geriatric Psychiatry. I thought you said there was no Dr. Franklin. I thought there wasn't. My hands were shaking as I googled the name. Here he is. Dr. Richard Franklin, but, oh god. His medical license was suspended 8 months ago for inappropriate prescribing practices to elderly patients. Sarah sank into one of Grandma's kitchen chairs. So Jessica found a corrupt doctor who would prescribe drugs to make Grandma confused and easy to manipulate. The pieces were falling into place with sickening clarity. That's why she didn't want Dr. Martinez involved anymore. He would have recognized these medications, would have known they weren't appropriate. And that's why Grandma was taking taxis to see Dr. Martinez, Mark added. She knew something was wrong. She was trying to figure out why she was so confused all the time. I thought about all those phone calls over the past 6 months where Grandma had seemed a little off, a little slower to follow conversations. I'd assumed it was normal aging, maybe grief from losing some of her friends. But it was Jessica, systematically drugging her into compliance. The timeline fits, I said, feeling sick. Jessica said the will was changed 6 months ago. Right around when these prescriptions started. Sarah was crying now, tears of rage and grief. She drugged our grandmother. She drugged a sweet, innocent woman who trusted her. I picked up my phone and started dialing. Who are you calling? Mark asked. Detective Morrison. I met him at a community safety meeting last year. If this isn't elder abuse, I don't know what is. But even as I waited for someone to answer, Jessica's confident words echoed in my head. The will is legal, properly witnessed, and filed with probate court. What if the drugs had worn off by the time Grandma signed the new will? What if Jessica had been smart enough to make sure Grandma appeared competent during the legal proceedings, even if she'd been manipulated for months beforehand? Riverside Police, Detective Morrison speaking. Detective Morrison, this is Emma Chin. I need to report elder abuse and possible fraud involving my recently deceased grandmother. I'll need you to come in and file a formal report. Can you be here within the hour? Yes, and detective? I think we're going to need a warrant to search my niece's apartment. I have evidence she was illegally medicating my grandmother. After I hung up, the three of us stood there looking at the pill bottles scattered across Grandma's table. Physical proof that Jessica had been systematically drugging the woman who'd raised us with love and kindness. She's not going to get away with this, I said quietly. But even as I said it, I wondered if Jessica was right. Would any of this matter legally if the will had been properly executed? How do you prove someone was coerced when they're no longer alive to testify? One thing was certain, this was just the beginning. The police station smelled like burnt coffee and disinfectant. Detective Morrison looked exactly like I remembered, mid-40s, graying temples, the kind of tired eyes that had seen too much. He listened without interruption as I laid out everything we'd discovered, the pill bottles sealed in evidence bags on his desk between us. This is a good start, he said finally, but I need you to understand something. Elder abuse cases are notoriously difficult to prosecute, especially when the victim is deceased. My heart sank. But we have the illegal medications. Proof she was drugging Grandma. We have proof these medications were in your grandmother's house, Detective Morrison corrected gently. That's not the same as proving your niece administered them, or that your grandmother didn't consent to taking them. She got them from a doctor with a suspended license. Which we'll definitely investigate. But Jessica could claim she didn't know about the license suspension, that she was just trying to help your grandmother get psychiatric care. He leaned back in his chair. The will issue makes this even more complicated. If your grandmother appeared competent when she signed those documents. She was being drugged into confusion for months, Sarah interjected. How is that not coercion? It absolutely could be coercion. But proving it in court, beyond reasonable doubt. That's another matter entirely. I felt like screaming. Jessica had been so confident because she'd covered her tracks well. What about the missing family heirlooms? The recipe box, the china cabinet? Did your grandmother give written consent for Jessica to remove those items? We don't know. Jessica claims she threw some things away and put others in storage. Detective Morrison made notes on his legal pad. We'll need to trace those items. If she sold them, there might be a paper trail. That could constitute theft, which would strengthen the elder abuse case. Mark leaned forward. What about financial records? Jessica mentioned payments during that phone call Emma overheard. Now that's promising, Morrison said. Financial exploitation is easier to prove than emotional manipulation. Do you have access to your grandmother's bank statements? I shook my head. Jessica has power of attorney. She's the only one who can access those accounts right now. We can get a warrant for financial records if we can establish probable cause. These medications might be enough. He tapped the evidence bags. I'll need to verify Dr. Franklin's license status and get official documentation of the suspension. 20 minutes later, we were walking out of the police station with case number 2024 to 8847 and Morrison's promise that he'd start investigating immediately. But his warnings echoed in my head. Elder abuse cases were difficult to prove, especially when the primary witness was dead. My phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. Asterisk, I heard you went to the police. That was a mistake. Some things are better left buried with the dead. J asterisk. She's threatening us, I said, showing Mark and Sarah the message. Screenshot that, Sarah said immediately. Send it to Detective Morrison. But as I was forwarding the text, another message came through. Asterisk, check your email. I think you'll find it interesting. Asterisk. My email had one new message from an address I didn't recognize. The subject line read, Rosechan final recording. With trembling fingers, I opened the attachment. It was an audio file, timestamped 3 weeks before Grandma's death. Her voice came through my phone speaker, weak but unmistakably hers. I don't know who will hear this, but I need someone to know the truth. Jessica has been giving me pills that make me feel strange, confused. I've been pretending to take them, hiding them under my tongue, because I'm scared of what she might do if she realizes I know. My breath caught. Grandma's voice continued. I changed my will because she threatened to put me in a nursing home if I didn't. She said no one else wanted the burden of caring for me, that I should be grateful she was willing to stay. I was so scared and confused from those pills. I didn't know what else to do. The recording ended with the sound of footsteps and Grandma's voice, terrified, she's coming back. I have to hide this. I stared at my phone in shock. Jessica just sent us evidence of her own crime. Why would she do that? Mark asked. Another text appeared, asterisk, because I have 12 more recordings, and they get much worse. Drop the investigation, or I release them publicly and everyone learns what a coward your precious grandmother really was. Asterisk. Jessica was trying to silence us with the very evidence that could destroy her. I stared at Jessica's text until the words blurred. She was using Grandma's own terrified voice as blackmail, threatening to humiliate a dead woman who'd been brave enough to record evidence of her abuse. We have to call Detective Morrison, Sarah said, but I was already shaking my head. Not yet. If we turn this over to police, it becomes evidence in a criminal case. That could take months or years to resolve, and Jessica gets to keep everything until then. My mind was racing. She made a mistake sending us this recording. How is proof of elder abuse a mistake? Mark asked. Because she's admitting she has 12 recordings of Grandma being terrified and coerced. She can't release them publicly without destroying herself. I took a screenshot of the text messages. But more importantly, she just proved Grandma was competent enough to secretly record her own evidence. The pieces of a plan were forming in my head. Jessica thinks she's untouchable because the will was properly executed. But what if we could prove it was signed under duress? My phone rang. Unknown number. Emma Chan, I answered cautiously. Hello dear, this is Margaret Holloway. I work at Sunrise Notary Services downtown. The voice was elderly, shaky. I saw your grandmother's obituary in the paper, and I've been struggling with my conscience ever since. I put the call on speaker. What do you mean, Mrs. Holloway? I notarized a document for Rose about 6 months ago. A will update. But something felt very wrong about the whole situation. Margaret's voice dropped to a whisper. Your grandmother seemed, not herself. Drowsy, confused. She kept asking the same questions over and over. My heart started pounding. Can you tell me more about that day? The young woman who brought her, Jessica, I think, kept answering for Rose, explaining what she meant to say. Red flags everywhere, but technically Rose was verbal and responsive enough to sign. Margaret paused. I should have refused the notarization, but Jessica was very insistent. Insistent how? She mentioned that Rose had good days and bad days, that this was one of her clearer moments. Made me feel like I'd be denying an elderly woman her right to make decisions if I questioned her competency. Margaret's voice was heavy with regret. But I'd been a notary for 35 years, and something was off. Rose kept looking around like she didn't know where she was. This was exactly what we needed. Mrs. Holloway, would you be willing to make a statement about what you observed? That's why I'm calling, dear. I can't live with myself knowing I might have enabled something wrong. We arranged to meet Margaret at her office in an hour. After hanging up, I immediately called Detective Morrison and updated him on the recording and the notary's concerns. This changes things significantly, Morrison said. A notary questioning the signatory's competency could invalidate the will entirely, especially combined with evidence of chemical coercion. What's our next step? I'm expediting the warrant for Jessica's financial records and apartment search. If she's been systematically drugging and stealing from your grandmother, we need to find evidence before she destroys it. But when we arrived at Margaret Holloway's office, we found something that made my blood run cold. The elderly woman was there as promised, but she wasn't alone. Jessica sat in the corner chair, her face a mask of concerned sympathy. Emma, she exclaimed, standing up with apparent surprise. What a coincidence. I was just visiting Mrs. Holloway to thank her for helping Grandma with her final arrangements. Margaret looked confused and frightened. These are your family members, Jessica? The ones you mentioned? My cousins, yes. We're all grieving differently, I'm afraid. Jessica's tone was gentle, understanding. They're having trouble accepting Grandma's final wishes. I realized with growing horror that Jessica had somehow figured out Margaret was going to contact us. Mrs. Holloway, what exactly has Jessica told you? Just that some family members have been questioning Rose's mental state, trying to claim she wasn't competent to make decisions. Margaret glanced nervously between us. Jessica explained that you might try to pressure me into changing my notary records. Jessica's smile was poisonous sweet. Of course, I told Mrs. Holloway that grief makes people do desperate things. Like inventing stories about medications or mental incompetence. She's lying, I said desperately. Mrs. Holloway, you called me. You said something felt wrong that day. But Margaret was shaking her head, looking more confused by the minute. No, dear. I called Jessica to express my condolences. She mentioned you might contact me with questions. Jessica had gotten here first. Somehow manipulated or confused Margaret just like she'd done with Grandma. The notarization was completely standard, Margaret continued, pulling out a file. Rose was alert and oriented. She knew exactly what she was signing. I watched our key witness slip away, Jessica's influence spreading like poison through every potential avenue of justice. But as we left Margaret's office in defeat, my phone buzzed with a text from Detective Morrison, * search warrant approved. We execute tomorrow at 8 a.m. Don't let Jessica know. *. Jessica had won this round, but she didn't know the police were coming. The search warrant execution was scheduled for 8 a.m., but at 6:47 a.m. my phone exploded with notifications. Jessica had posted on every social media platform she had, playing the victim with Oscar-worthy performance. * devastated that family members are trying to criminalize grief. My beloved grandmother Rose chose to leave me her estate because I sacrificed everything to care for her. Now her other grandchildren are making false police reports and harassing witnesses. Some people can't accept that love and dedication matter more than blood relation. #Justice for Grandma Rose #ElderCareHero*. The post already had 47 sympathetic comments and 12 shares. Worse, she tagged our hometown newspaper and 3 local news stations. She's getting ahead of the story, Sarah said when I called her in a panic. Making herself look like the wronged caregiver before the police search hits the news. I was pacing my apartment, checking the time obsessively. Detective Morrison said not to contact her, but what if she's destroying evidence right now? Emma, breathe. She posted this from her apartment, there's a timestamp and location tag. She's still there. At exactly 8 a.m., my phone rang. Detective Morrison. We're at Jessica's apartment now, he said, his voice tight. She's not here. Neighbors say they saw her loading boxes into a car around midnight. My stomach dropped. She ran? Looks like it. But here's the interesting part, she left behind a lot of stuff she shouldn't have if she was planning to disappear forever. Expensive electronics, furniture, clothes. This feels more like she's hiding specific evidence, not fleeing permanently. What did you find? Empty pill bottles matching the medications from your grandmother's house. A file folder labeled Rosechin Financial with bank routing numbers and account passwords written in Jessica's handwriting. Morrison paused. And a business card for something called Golden Years Estate Planning Services. I'd never heard of that company. What kind of estate planning service? That's what we're about to find out. The address is a small office in a strip mall on Riverside Drive. We're heading there next. Can we meet you there? Actually, I'd prefer if you stayed away for now. If this turns into a larger fraud investigation, I don't want Jessica claiming you contaminated evidence or influenced witnesses. After Morrison hung up, I felt completely helpless. Jessica was out there somewhere, probably destroying whatever evidence she'd removed from her apartment. Meanwhile, I was supposed to sit at home and wait. But at 10:30 a.m., my phone rang with a number I recognized, Grandma's landline. Hello? I answered cautiously. Emma, it's me. Jessica's voice was calm, almost cheerful. I'm at Grandma's house. I thought we should talk. The police are looking for you. I know. I saw the search warrant. Very dramatic. She laughed, a sound that made my skin crawl. But I think there's been a misunderstanding. I have something that will clear everything up. What kind of something? Come to the house and I'll show you. Just you, Emma. No siblings, no police. We can settle this like family. Every instinct screamed that this was a trap, but I needed to know what she thought could possibly clear up systematic elder abuse and fraud. I'll be there in 20 minutes, I said. Perfect. Oh, and Emma? You might want to prepare yourself. What I'm about to show you is going to change how you think about Grandma Rose forever. The line went dead, leaving me staring at my phone and wondering what fresh manipulation Jessica had prepared. But as I grabbed my car keys, I made sure to do one thing first. I called Detective Morrison and told him exactly where I was going. If Jessica wanted to play games, she'd be playing them with an audience. The drive to Grandma's house felt like approaching a crime scene. I kept checking my rearview mirror, half expecting Jessica to have some accomplice following me. Detective Morrison had promised to have units nearby, but told me to go in alone as planned. They'd be listening through the wire I was wearing. Jessica opened the front door before I even knocked, wearing the same black dress from the lawyer's office but looking like she hadn't slept. Her makeup was smudged, her usually perfect hair pulled back in a messy ponytail. Emma. Thank you for coming. She hugged me like nothing had happened, like she hadn't just evaded a police search warrant. I know this has all been so confusing. The house felt different somehow. Colder. Several pieces of furniture had been moved, and I noticed boxes stacked in the living room that hadn't been there yesterday. What did you want to show me, Jessica? Coffee first, she insisted, leading me toward the kitchen. We need to talk properly, like Grandma would have wanted. I followed reluctantly, my hand brushing against the small recording device taped under my shirt. The kitchen smelled like bleach, and the counters were spotless, too spotless, like someone had been scrubbing away evidence. Jessica poured 2 cups of coffee from a fresh pot, her movements unnaturally calm. I need you to understand something about Grandma Rose. She wasn't the sweet, innocent woman you remember. Jessica, whatever you're about to say dash. She was blackmailing people. Jessica set my coffee cup down with deliberate precision. 4 years. That's where her money really came from. I stared at her. That's insane. Grandma Rose was a retired teacher who lived on Social Security and her pension. That's what she wanted everyone to believe. Jessica walked over to one of the boxes and pulled out a manila folder thick with documents. But I found her real files. Hidden in a secret compartment in her bedroom closet. She spread papers across the kitchen table, photographs, letters, bank statements. My coffee grew cold as I looked through what appeared to be documentation of extramarital affairs, financial improprieties, and personal scandals involving people I recognized from around town. This is impossible, I whispered, picking up a photograph of Mayor Davidson's wife with someone who definitely wasn't Mayor Davidson. Grandma wouldn't, she couldn't. $5,000 a month from the Davidson family alone, Jessica said, pointing to bank deposits highlighted in yellow. $3,000 from the Hendersons at the hardware store. The list goes on, Emma. Your beloved grandmother was a predator who destroyed people's lives for money. The papers looked legitimate, but something felt wrong. The dates, the handwriting, the way everything was just too perfectly organized. Where exactly did you find these? Hidden behind a false wall in her closet. She made me promise never to tell anyone, said it would ruin her reputation. Jessica's voice took on that familiar wounded tone. She begged me to destroy everything after she died, but I couldn't. These families deserve to stop living in fear. I picked up one of the bank statements, studying it more carefully. The deposits were real, I could see that much. But the amounts seemed too neat, too regular. Jessica, these deposits are all from the last 8 months. What? Look at the dates. They all started right around the time you moved in with Grandma. I felt my heart pounding as the pieces clicked together. You've been depositing blackmail money into her account. Jessica's mask slipped for just a second, a flash of panic before the wounded expression returned. That's ridiculous. Why would I blackmail people using Grandma's account? Because you needed a money trail that looked like it came from her. Something to justify her leaving you everything. I stood up slowly, keeping my voice calm despite the terror building in my chest. You've been running blackmail schemes using information you probably stole from these people somehow, then depositing the payments in Grandma's account to make it look like she was the blackmailer. You're being paranoid, Dash. And now that she's dead, you're going to approach these families and offer to destroy the evidence in exchange for even more money. They'll pay anything to keep their secrets buried with Grandma. Jessica stared at me for a long moment, and slowly her expression changed completely. The wounded victim vanished, replaced by someone cold and calculating that made my blood run ice cold. You're smarter than I gave you credit for, she said quietly. Though not quite smart enough to stay away when I told you to drop this. That's when I noticed she'd moved between me and the kitchen door while I was examining the papers. And when I looked down at my untouched coffee cup, I could see a faint residue of white powder settled at the bottom. The coffee was never meant to be a friendly gesture, was it? I asked. Jessica's smile was genuinely terrifying. Grandma always said you were the clever one in the family. Too bad cleverness won't help you now. My hand instinctively moved toward the recording device under my shirt, but Jessica caught the movement immediately. Oh, you're wired, she said with genuine amusement. Of course you are. Detective Morrison's idea, I'm guessing? He seems like the thorough type. She pulled her phone out and started playing music loud enough to interfere with any recording. There. Now we can talk privately. The police know where I am, Jessica. They'll be here soon. Actually, they're about 30 minutes away, stuck dealing with a very dramatic gas leak at Golden Years Estate Planning Services. Her smile was predatory. Amazing how these emergencies happen at just the right time. My blood ran cold. You called in a fake gas leak. I called in a very real gas leak that I may have, encouraged, with a few adjustments to the building's main line last night. Jessica perched on the edge of the kitchen counter like we were having a casual conversation. Don't worry, no one got hurt. I'm not a monster, Emma. I'm just very good at creating distractions when I need them. I glanced toward the back door, calculating distances. What do you want, Jessica? I want you to understand something important. Grandma Rose really was being blackmailed by me. But she was also genuinely grateful for my care. The will change wasn't entirely coerced. She loved me more than the rest of you, even knowing what I was doing. The casual way she admitted to blackmailing her own grandmother made me physically sick. You're lying. Am I? Jessica walked over to another box and pulled out a small digital recorder, much newer than the one that had captured Grandma's terrified voice. Listen to this. From 3 weeks before she died. She pressed play, and Grandma's voice filled the kitchen, but this time she sounded different. Resigned, almost peaceful. I know what you've been doing, Jessica. The pills, the blackmail schemes, all of it. But you know what? I'm tired of fighting. I'm 87 years old, and I just want these last months to be peaceful. If leaving you the house means you'll stop hurting those families, then maybe that's the right thing to do. Jessica paused the recording. She knew everything, Emma. And she chose me anyway. Because you broke her down. You drugged her and scared her into submission. I gave her clarity. Jessica's voice hardened. Do you know how many people came to her funeral talking about what a sweet, innocent woman she was? None of them knew the real Rose Chin. The woman who hoarded money while her neighbors struggled. The woman who kept detailed files on everyone's mistakes and weaknesses, just in case she ever needed leverage. She pulled out a leather-bound notebook I recognized, Grandma's recipe book. But when Jessica opened it, instead of handwritten recipes, I saw notes in Grandma's careful handwriting. Mrs. Davidson, affair with postal worker, husband doesn't know. Henderson family, son's gambling debts, wife unaware. She wasn't blackmailing people, I said, my voice barely a whisper. She was just observant. She wrote down gossip. Gossip that I turned into income, Jessica said proudly. I found this notebook 6 months after moving in. Realized what a goldmine of information it was. Grandma had been collecting secrets for decades but was too timid to monetize them. I simply helped her see their true value. The kitchen door suddenly rattled, and both of us froze. Emma? You in there? Mark's voice called from outside. Your car's in the driveway, but you're not answering your phone. Jessica's eyes flashed with panic, then calculation. Tell him you're fine and that you'll call him later, she whispered urgently. Emma? Mark called again, and I could hear him trying the door handle. Jessica moved closer to me, and I saw she had something in her hand, a syringe filled with clear liquid. One word out of place, and your brother gets to watch you take a very long nap. The same kind Grandma used to take when she got too curious about my activities. My mouth went dry. What's in that syringe? The same cocktail I used to keep Grandma manageable. Completely undetectable after a few hours, but very effective for making people compliant. Mark was knocking harder now. Emma, I'm coming in. I heard the back door open and his footsteps in the hallway. Jessica raised the syringe, her eyes locked on mine. Choose very carefully what you say next. Mark's footsteps were getting closer, and Jessica's grip on the syringe tightened. I could see her calculating whether she could inject me and somehow explain it away before my brother reached the kitchen. Emma? Mark's voice was right outside the kitchen door now. I'm fine. I called out, trying to keep my voice steady. Just going through some of Grandma's things with Jessica. Jessica nodded approvingly, but didn't lower the syringe. Through the doorway, I could see Mark's shadow hesitating in the hallway. Your phone's been going straight to voicemail for an hour, he said. Detective Morrison has been trying to reach you. My phone. I turned it to silent when I came in, but Morrison must have been calling about the gas leak situation. Jessica's expression darkened at the mention of the detective's name. Tell him you'll call back, Jessica whispered. But Mark was already pushing through the kitchen door. The police found something at that estate planning office. He stopped mid-sentence when he saw Jessica holding the syringe, her body positioned between me and the exit. Well, Jessica said with an almost casual sigh, this is unfortunate. Mark's eyes went wide as he took in the scene, the scattered blackmail documents on the table, my untouched coffee with the white residue, Jessica's threatening posture. Emma, step away from her. Now. She can't, Jessica said conversationally. We're having a very important discussion about family loyalty. Mark pulled out his phone, but Jessica laughed. Go ahead, call 911. Tell them there's an emergency at Rose Chen's house. They'll put you on hold for 20 minutes while they deal with the gas leak crisis across town. You caused that gas leak, Mark said, and it wasn't a question. I caused a lot of things, Jessica replied. Amazing how much you can accomplish when people underestimate you because you're young and pretty. She gestured with her free hand toward the documents on the table. Did Emma tell you about Grandma's little hobby? Collecting secrets like some people collect stamps? Mark glanced at the papers, and I saw his face change as he recognized some of the names and photographs. These are fake. The blackmail schemes are real, Jessica said. The money in Grandma's account is real. The only fake thing was my concern for her well-being. What's in the syringe? Mark demanded. Just something to help Emma relax while we finish our conversation. Jessica's voice took on that sickeningly sweet tone she'd used at the lawyer's office. She's been under so much stress lately, making wild accusations about elder abuse. Sometimes people need medical intervention for their own good. I realized with growing horror that Jessica was planning to drug me and then claim I'd had some kind of breakdown. With the blackmail evidence scattered on the table and Grandma's notebook full of secrets, she could spin a story about me discovering my beloved grandmother's dark side and being unable to cope. The police already know about the medications you were giving Grandma, I said, hoping to shake her confidence. They found the empty bottles in your apartment. They found bottles that could have belonged to anyone, Jessica corrected. Bottles that a grieving granddaughter might have planted to deflect attention from her own discovery of family shame. Mark was slowly moving closer, trying to position himself for a better angle. Jessica, put the syringe down. Whatever you think you need to do here, this isn't the way. You don't understand, Jessica said, and for the first time her composure cracked slightly. I worked so hard for this. 2 years of my life, listening to her stories, pretending to care about her stupid recipes and photo albums. Do you know what it's like to smile and nod while some old woman tells you the same story about her dead husband for the 100th time? The mask was fully off now, revealing the contempt she'd been hiding all along. She wasn't even grateful, Jessica continued, her voice rising. Even after I solved her money problems, even after I made sure she had the best care, she kept questioning everything. Kept trying to call her precious Dr. Martinez behind my back. Because you were poisoning her, Mark said flatly. Jessica's laugh was genuinely chilling. I was managing her. Making sure she stayed calm and cooperative instead of being a suspicious, paranoid burden on everyone around her. My recording device was still running under my shirt, capturing every word of her confession. Even with the music playing, some of this had to be getting through to Detective Morrison's team. Here's what's going to happen, Jessica said, raising the syringe toward my arm. Emma is going to take a little nap, and when she wakes up, she's going to realize that fighting this inheritance is pointless. Grandma made her choice, and we're all going to respect it. But as she moved closer, Mark leaned forward, grabbing for her wrist. The syringe went flying, shattering against the kitchen wall as both of them crashed into Grandma's table, scattering the blackmail documents across the floor. And in that moment of chaos, I heard the most beautiful sound in the world, police sirens, getting louder by the second. Jessica heard them too. Her face went white as she scrambled to her feet, looking around the kitchen like a trapped animal. You called them, she said accusingly. You set me up. No, I said, backing toward the door as Mark kept himself between Jessica and me. You set yourself up the minute you decided to hurt someone who loved you. The sirens were right outside now. Car doors slamming, voices shouting instructions. Jessica looked at the scattered evidence, at Mark blocking her path, at me by the door. Then she smiled, that same cold, calculating smile that had fooled us all for so long. This isn't over, she said quietly. Even if they arrest me, the blackmail victims will pay anything to keep their secrets buried. I'll be out on bail within hours. But as the police burst through both doors simultaneously, Detective Morrison leading the charge with his weapon drawn, I couldn't help but smile back. Actually, Jessica, I think it is. Jessica was arrested on 6 felony charges, but Detective Morrison's warning proved prophetic. She made bail within 18 hours. Her social media campaign had worked better than any of us anticipated. Local news picked up the story with the angle of grieving family destroys young woman's life over inheritance dispute, and suddenly half the town was taking Jessica's side. The bail money came from an anonymous donor, which Morrison suspected was one of her blackmail victims trying to keep her quiet. Within a week, Jessica had retained Marcus Webb, the most expensive defense attorney in the county, somehow managing to pay his $50,000 retainer despite claiming to live paycheck to paycheck. She's got money flowing from somewhere, Morrison told me during one of our weekly updates. Webb doesn't take cases like this unless he's guaranteed payment, and Jessica Chen shouldn't have that kind of cash. The preliminary hearing was set for October 15th, 6 weeks away. In the meantime, Grandma's estate remained frozen, Jessica was free to continue her manipulation campaign, and I was getting death threats from strangers who bought into her victim narrative. But 3 days after her release, I got a call that changed everything. Ms. Chen? This is Eleanor Vasquez from Adult Protective Services. The voice was crisp, professional. I'm calling about a complaint we received regarding Jessica Chen's current living situation. I sat up straighter. What kind of complaint? She's apparently moved in with an 81-year-old man named Robert Hendricks. Mr. Hendrick's daughter contacted us because her father suddenly changed his will last week, leaving everything to his devoted caregiver Jessica. Eleanor's tone was carefully neutral. Given Ms. Chen's pending charges, we're investigating. My blood ran cold. She's doing it again. We can't discuss specifics, but I wanted to ask if you'd be willing to share your experience with our investigation. Sometimes patterns help us protect vulnerable adults. I immediately called Detective Morrison, who wasn't surprised by this development. We've been monitoring Jessica's activities as part of her bail conditions. She's not supposed to have unsupervised contact with anyone over 65, but apparently Mr. Hendricks hired her as a private companion before the restriction was put in place. Can't you arrest her for violating bail? Not unless we can prove she's actually harming him. Having a job caring for an elderly person isn't illegal, even for someone charged with elder abuse. Morrison sounded frustrated. But this gives us an opportunity. If she's repeating her pattern with Hendricks, she might make mistakes we can catch this time. The plan Morrison outlined was risky but brilliant. Adult Protective Services would do a routine wellness check on Mr. Hendricks, during which they'd document any concerning medications or unusual circumstances. Meanwhile, I would approach some of the blackmail victims from Grandma's files, the ones whose secrets Jessica had monetized, and offer them a chance to testify against her in exchange for keeping their information private. Most blackmail victims never come forward because they're ashamed, Morrison explained. But if we can show them Jessica's pattern of behavior, prove she's still actively dangerous, some might be willing to help stop her. The first person I contacted was Margaret Davidson, the mayor's wife. When I called and carefully explained that I had information about payments she'd been making to my grandmother, the silence on the phone lasted nearly 30 seconds. I don't know what you're talking about, she finally said, but her voice was shaking. Mrs. Davidson, Jessica Chen has been arrested for elder abuse and fraud. She's currently living with another elderly man whose family is worried about his safety. I kept my voice gentle but firm. If you've been making payments to keep certain information private, you should know that Jessica is the one who's been blackmailing you, not my grandmother. Another long pause. Your grandmother was very understanding about my situation. She said as long as I helped with her expenses, she wouldn't feel compelled to share what she'd observed. What exactly did she observe? Nothing, Margaret said quickly. There was nothing to observe. I was just grateful for her discretion about family matters. But I could hear the lie in her voice. Whatever Jessica had discovered or photographed, it was serious enough that Margaret Davidson had been paying $5,000 a month to keep it quiet. Mrs. Davidson, Jessica is going to keep blackmailing you whether she's convicted or not. The only way this ends is if we stop her together. I can't, Margaret whispered. You don't understand what this would do to my family, my husband's career. She hung up, but I wasn't discouraged. The fear in her voice confirmed that Jessica's blackmail schemes were ongoing and lucrative. More importantly, it meant Jessica was still actively committing crimes while out on bail. Over the next week, I contacted 4 more families from Grandma's notebook. 2 hung up immediately, 1 threatened to call the police if I contacted them again, but the 4th conversation was different. Mr. Henderson? This is Emma Chan, Rose Chen's granddaughter. Emma. I was so sorry to hear about Rose. She was good people. Tom Henderson's voice was warm, genuine. How are you holding up with all this legal nonsense I've been hearing about? That's actually why I'm calling. I think you might be able to help me understand something. I took a breath. Have you been making any payments to my grandmother over the past few months? For any reason? The silence was brief but telling. Well, sure. Rose was having some financial difficulties with her medical expenses. I was happy to help out an old friend. How much were you paying her, Mr. Henderson? $3,000 a month. Not a big deal for us, and Rose was too proud to accept it as charity. We had to frame it as payment for her discretion about some family business. My heart sank. Tom Henderson genuinely thought he'd been helping Grandma, not being blackmailed. What kind of family business? My son Danny's gambling debts. Rose happened to be at the bank when Danny came in asking for a loan to cover some bad bets. She promised not to mention it to anyone, especially not to my wife. Danny was embarrassed enough without the whole town knowing. This was exactly Jessica's method, take normal neighborly concern and twist it into a blackmail opportunity. Mr. Henderson, I need to tell you something important about those payments. By the time I finished explaining Jessica's scheme, Tom Henderson was furious. That manipulative little witch used Rose's kindness to steal from us? And now she's probably telling people Rose was some kind of criminal mastermind? Would you be willing to testify about this? Help us prove Jessica was behind the blackmail? Hell yes, I would. Rose Chen never hurt anybody in her life, and I won't let some con artist destroy her reputation to cover her own crimes. Finally, I had someone willing to fight back. But when I called Detective Morrison to share the good news, his voice was grim. Emma, we have a problem. Mr. Hendricks was just admitted to the hospital with symptoms consistent with drug poisoning. And Jessica Chen has disappeared. The manhunt for Jessica lasted 3 days. She vanished completely, abandoned her car at the bus station, emptied her bank accounts, deleted all social media. Meanwhile, Mr. Hendricks lay in intensive care, his system flooded with the same cocktail of psychiatric medications Jessica had used on Grandma. Detective Morrison coordinated with FBI Financial Crimes Unit to trace Jessica's money trail. What they found was staggering, over $400,000 in payments from 17 different families over 8 months. She'd been running blackmail schemes across 3 counties, using elderly people's homes as her base of operations while slowly drugging and manipulating them. On Thursday evening, my phone rang with a number I didn't recognize. Emma? It's Margaret Davidson. Her voice was stronger now, determined. I saw the news about Mr. Hendricks. I can't let this continue. Mrs. Davidson dash. I'm ready to testify. About everything. She took a shaky breath. Jessica had photographs of me with my son's soccer coach. It was stupid, meaningless, but it would have destroyed my marriage. I'd been living in terror for months, but watching what she did to that poor man. Thank you, I said, tears in my eyes. This is exactly what we needed. Over the next 2 days, 4 more blackmail victims came forward. The FBI traced Jessica's phone to a hotel in Phoenix, where she'd apparently been planning to establish herself with a new elderly victim, a wealthy widow she'd met through an online caregiving service. They arrested her Friday morning at 6 a.m. But the real victory came 3 weeks later, when the forensic accountants finished reconstructing Jessica's financial crimes. She'd stolen over $600,000 total, not just from blackmail victims, but from the elderly people she'd been caring for. Grandma's account showed unauthorized withdrawals of $47,000 over 6 months, all carefully hidden among legitimate care expenses. The prosecution offered Jessica a plea deal, 15 years in prison in exchange for returning every stolen dollar and providing complete financial records to help investigators return money to victims. Her expensive lawyer advised her to take it. She refused, still believing she could manipulate her way out of consequences. The trial lasted 2 weeks. Tom Henderson testified about the blackmail scheme, describing how Jessica had twisted his genuine concern for Grandma into a financial exploitation. Margaret Davidson broke down on the stand recounting months of terror and manipulation. Mr. Hendricks, recovered but frail, spoke about trusting Jessica only to wake up in a hospital fighting for his life. But the most powerful evidence was Grandma's own voice. 12 recordings Jessica had kept as insurance, thinking they made Grandma look weak. Instead, they revealed a terrified woman trying to protect herself while slowly realizing the scope of Jessica's betrayal. The jury deliberated for 90 minutes. Guilty on all charges: elder abuse, fraud, theft, blackmail, attempted poisoning. 28 years in prison, no possibility of parole for 15. The civil court moved faster. Grandma's original will, the one that split everything equally among her grandchildren, was declared valid after Jessica's coerced version was thrown out. More importantly, every stolen dollar was returned with interest. I used my portion of Grandma's estate to establish the Rose Chin Foundation for Elder Protection, providing legal advocacy for elderly abuse victims. Mark and Sarah joined as board members, and we hired Detective Morrison as our chief investigator after he retired from the police force. Jessica's cell doesn't allow social media, but I sometimes wonder if she knows that her victims are now her hunters, protecting other vulnerable people from predators just like her. Grandma Rose's reputation was fully restored, her kindness remembered instead of Jessica's lies. And sometimes, when I'm working late at the foundation office, I swear I can smell her snickerdoodles and hear her voice whispering, "Well done, sweetheart. Well done."